Okay, so we're going to have a look at Bayonet Charge from the AQA Power and Conflict Anthology. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, what we're going to do is just get some very kind of basic annotations onto the poem so we can start thinking about quotations to commit to memory. Then we're going to layer on some of that all-important AO3 or context so that we get a really nice overview of the poem. Now, the acronym that I invented that I like to use when it comes to doing my initial annotations on a poem, any poem, whether it is seen or unseen, is FIRST. And I'm just going to show you what FIRST stands for, okay? So the F in FIRST stands for first and last line of the poem, okay? So I'm just going to label that F. My I then stands for imagery. Now, imagery, I'm just going to pick out any piece of imagery that I think would be worth talking about at some point, okay? So maybe I'm going to go with the patriotic tear that had brimmed in his eye, sweating like a molten iron from the center of his chest. And I'm just going to label that I. Then I'm going to look for any R, which is repetition. Now, repetition can be of individual words. It can be of themes, ideas, motifs. It can be, indeed, semantic fields, lexical fields, any of those sorts of things. On this occasion, I'm actually going to be identifying a particular I guess, morpheme of a word. I'm just going to be looking for the ings, okay? So I've got a bunch of ings in this poem that really, really kind of get everything across that I think is worth addressing in this poem. So I've got running, stumbling, okay, smacking, sweating. Then we've got running again. We've got running. I'm going to ignore threshing because it's an adjective, and I think again with yelling and crackling. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it with the verbs. Okay, so there is my R for repetition. Then I'm going to be looking at S for structure. Now, the structure that I notice kind of quite significantly in this poem is that we have a number of kind of overlong lines. So each stanza has at least one overly long line that I think would be worth commenting on what's going on there to disrupt the meter of the poem. And then finally, the T, which ironically is the first thing that you see, not the last thing, is going to be for title. Okay, so my title, bayonet charge. So I'm just going to label that T for title. Okay, then what I'm going to go through and do is just annotate these 5 things that I found in the poem. Okay, and that should be enough to get me going with some analysis, and certainly enough to be going on with to commit a few of these quotations to memory. So, bayonet charge. Okay, so bayonet. This is clearly indicative of a military situation. Charge, obviously, immediate action. The fact that it is a bayonet, suggesting potentially slightly what I might call old school, because it's not kind of a very modern weapon. It's one of those guns that has the kind of sword on the end, so it's quite old-fashioned or old school. And that's probably going to be enough, apart from the fact that we have no determiner. No determiner, so no the bayonet charge, no a bayonet charge, no this bayonet charge. It is just bayonet charge. So does that mean that this is a universal experience? Potentially, because it's not specifying anything. Beautiful, okay? So I've got some impressions that I'm expecting this poem to be about the military and immediate action during it. And if it's old school and it's military, is it potentially World War One? Okay, so then I'm going to be looking at my first and last line. What's going on here? Suddenly he awoke and was running. Well, I'm going to go straight in here. This is what we would call in media res, which literally means it's opening in the heart of the action, okay? So what this is about is immediacy, okay? So we've got immediacy. Now I notice here as well that he awoke and was running. It didn't say that he ran. He was running when he woke up, okay? So there is a lack of agency there. It's like the running happened before he was even aware of it, okay? He is not in control of his situation. And then raw, what's that referring to? What is raw in that situation? Is it him? Is it him? His emotions? It creates a kind of a little sense of mystery there. And then by the end of the poem, and this is what we always do with first and last line because it gives us some free structural comments. What has happened by the end of the poem? His terrors touchy dynamite. Okay, so at the beginning, he seems helpless and hopeless. Dare we say hapless? Whereas by the end, if he is touchy dynamite, he is volatile. Okay, he is dangerous. Now, he doesn't have any more control. He's still out of control, but by the end, he is volatile and dangerous. So the fact that his terror, he's still terrified, has turned into something kind of potentially dangerous. Okay, so there is danger in his the fact that he's kind of out of control and doesn't have anything, any lid on his emotions. Then I'm just going to jump into my one piece of imagery. And the piece of imagery that I picked out was the patriotic tear that had brimmed in his eye, sweating like molten iron from the center of his chest. Okay, so what has happened here? The patriotic tear had brimmed in his eye. Okay, so that feels like a kind of an expectation of this being a really heroic venture. And then the reality, like molten iron, from that simile, I'm just going to make a note of that so I make sure to use my terminology. The reality, so expectation versus reality, we've got the patriotic tear sweating like molten iron from the center of his chest, okay? Center of his chest, okay, clearly his heart, and clearly there is excess in there. So the heart is beating too fast, too hard, etc. Okay, sweating like molten iron, so melted metal. So it has gone from something patriotic, kind of gentle, heroic, into something really intense and unpleasant by the end of it. Okay, so a really nice piece of imagery there where we've taken that patriotic tear and it has turned into burning in his chest, so he's starting to really suffer. Okay, then I'm going to jump into my repetition. And what's really interesting about the ings, all of these ings here, is that this is ongoing. It is a brief moment. It is uncontrolled. So the fact that these are ongoing things, okay, so we've got what we call the progressive tense aspect, which is the ing, right? Progressive or continuous tense aspect. He is stumbling. Bullets are smacking. This tear is sweating. He was running, of his still running. Okay, so all of these, they create a sense, right, that this is happening right now, and there is no escaping from it. There is immediacy and intensity in this moment that is covered by the poem, and it is only a moment covered by the poem. So it's really, really powerful that all the way through we have lots of these ings and very few kind of completed actions in the past in that sort of preterite tense that we might use. Okay. Then we're going to have a look at the structure, and I just pointed out that we've got some overly long lines here. Stumbling across a field of clods towards a green hedge. That doesn't even complete. It's still in jams. That dazzled with rifle fire hearing. So we've got these sentences. He was running kind of over the edge like a man, and then plunged past with his bayonet towards the green hedge. Okay, so there is all of this sense of overrunning versus incompleteness. The ideas aren't complete, but they are still too long for the lines. This is all about excess. We get a sense of kind of a stream of consciousness, which is where you have a character's experience lived live through the writing and you go along with every moment of it. Okay, so we have a stream of consciousness established here with all of these lines that have enjambment. Okay, so the enjambment means that the lines run on. We have very few actual sentences. In fact, if we wanted to track the sentences, we go through, no sentence here. Where's the full stop? We need a full stop. There's no full stop in the first stanza. We've got, okay, so here's my question mark. So we've got one question mark. So in theory, all of that is one sentence for the first stanza and a half. What else do we have? And then we have another full stop here, creating a caesura. Then we have the final full stop. Okay, so the whole thing is 3 sentences. Okay, these overrunning lines are indicative of a person without emotional control. Okay, the lines overrun and yet they are incomplete. There is just too much to be able to keep a lid on. So we get this experience of a panicking soldier throughout. Okay, so there is our structure. We've done our title. So we've got FIRST. So first, we've got some really, really nice annotations on the poem, which I think give a really good idea of what the whole poem is about. But let's layer on some context. So this is written by Ted Hughes for his first collection of poems, The Hawk in the Rain, in 1957. Now, he capitalizes on known experience, okay, which is both his father fighting in and surviving World War One, okay, and he himself being 18 during World War II. Okay, so he has real lived experience to make reference to, although he never fought in a war himself. Okay, so if we go off the top of that, so politically, the poem aligns with Wilfred Owen and other anti-war poets like Siegfried Sassoon, etc., etc., contrasting with poets like Rupert Brooke and The Soldier. This whole idea is that he is very anti-war. There's no kind of denying that, and you can see that this experience of war is horrifying all the way through. It is a bewildering experience for these soldiers, but he has to, because he is kind of respectful, write from a more detached experience. Okay, it was composed decades after the war that it was clearly depicting, World War One, and he didn't have the lived experience of being a soldier. Okay, so in the exam you can refer to the fact that he has experience of being alive during World War II and can hear of his dad's experiences during World War One and anyone else he knew during World War II, but he doesn't have the direct lived experience. And so this kind of detached, almost dreamlike state perhaps is tallying with his lack of lived experience of the war. Okay, so there we have it, Bayonet Charge in a nutshell. We've got some annotations, we've got some contextual references. Hopefully that has given you a slightly better understanding of this wonderful poem.